Okay, now we're going to zoom in. We can see the car there. The car is here. Let's click on our player. Let's hold shift. Make our character smaller. Okay, with our character being smaller, let's click the preview button. Let's make this bigger so you can see. Character is very small. But the character is about the size of the cars. Our character is traveling around a little isometric world. Now see this, our character comes to the end of the screen and walks off. We don't want that. So let's fix that. Character might be a little too small. I'm going to click, I'm going to hold shift. Make the character bigger. I'm going to click this preview button. Okay, it looks better that he's not quite in scale with the cars. Like if he was going to get in the cars, but you can see him better. We still have things so when the player comes to the edge, looks like the player's going to walk off the screen. The character can walk off the screen. We don't want that, so we're going to fix that. Okay, to have it so we don't see our character walking off the screen, we're going to click back on New Scene Events where we see center the player, the camera on the player. We're going to click here. Oh, double click here. There we go. We're going to go to center the camera on an object within limits. We're going to double click here. For this top here, if it's grayed out and it doesn't look like you can select these options, you can. Don't let that get to you. You want this set for 0 for the top. This is just temporary 0 for that for 9. So the top two positions you can just start off with 0. We're going to change that. Now we're going to go to 1920. 1920 for this X position. And then for this we're going to put in 1080. So I'm just using standard high definition settings, right? So with that set up, we're going to click OK. We're just doing this just so we have numbers that we can see here that we can change. Okay, we're going to click on New Scene Events. We're going to zoom back, right? See all this area here? Watch what happens when we click play. We see just this area here, right? I'm going to click to get out of a preview. Just this area here. We don't see all of this area right here. And if I click the preview again, and I try to have our character walk up. Oh, okay, they are walking up. Okay, they walked up some, but they're not going to walk past this white car and into the kind of grass up there. So we're going to click to get out of there. They're coming. Our player characters here. They're walking up to about here. We don't have any of this here, right? Okay, what we need is we need to know where the edge of our map is at. So we can left click on our player character. When we left click on the player character, see this X here, this Y here. This is telling us where our player character is as far as this area here, right? So we're going to left click our player character, pull them over to this corner here. So with our player character over here, we can see what is the edge here. So what we're going to do is highlight this number here, hold Control, press C. So we copy that number. I'm going to click here. Remember that 0 here? If we actually double click here, see this says the X position. So what we're going to do is highlight over this, hold Control, press V. So now we have that X position. We're going to click OK. So now we're going to click back to New Scene Event. Here's the Y position. We're going to highlight that, hold Control, press C. I'm going to click here. I just clicked the click off of that, by the way. I'm going to double click here. So here's the Y position. So we're going to highlight here, hold Control, press V, and then click OK. So now we have that Y position as well. Okay, so now with that done, when we click the preview button, now we can see here's our player character over here. I'm going to close that to get out of that. I'm going to click back on new scene. Okay, so what I'm going to do is left click on our player character, move them back towards the center of our isometric background there. So now we're going to click the preview button again, and let's I'm going to maximize this view. So now we're going to travel up, and now you can see that we are traveling up into our Greenland there. We can see the water there. We can travel all the way over here along this fence, past a tree. And then our area stops there, and that's what we wanted to do. So we're going to travel to the other side. Traveling like this, you're like, okay, that's a decent amount of area we're covering there. So we're still traveling. And then now we have the screen there coming off the screen, this small piece of screen that we don't want to show there. Okay, so what we want to do is click on new scene as well as events. These numbers here, these first two numbers are fine. We know these numbers are for the most part correct because we used our player character to get these two numbers. This number here controls the width of our limits. So this is most likely why when we go to the side, we can see past what we want to see. So what we're going to do is click here. We're going to lower this down by 200. So then we're going to left click to just lock that in. Okay, now with that set up, we'll click the preview button. I'll click to maximize this. Let's travel up, go to the edge. So he's traveling. And now you can see when he gets to the edge, the camera doesn't just keep following him so that you can see the edge of the screen anymore. And then once he gets far enough away from the edge, the camera starts to follow him again. So now what we're going to do is travel down towards the bottom of the screen. And here we can see that he sees that what we don't want him to see. He has the ability to walk off of the screen. Okay, to fix that, what we're going to do is look at this number. This number controls our limits for up and down. We're going to click and change this to 800. Okay, so now with that number changed, let's click our preview. I'll click here to maximize this. Let's have him walk towards the bottom of the screen. Okay, now you can see near the bottom of the screen, he no longer can walk off the screen. And then when he walks up far enough, then the camera starts to follow him again. Okay, we're almost through this. I'm going to click the preview button. I'm going to click to maximize this. Now we have this building here. Now when I push to the right, we can just walk right through the building, and we don't want that. So that's actually fairly easy to set up. So we're going to set things up so you can't just walk through buildings like this. Okay, so we're going to click on New Scene. We're going to look to our right. We're going to click the plus button to the right. We're then going to select Sprite. We're going to name this Block. Then we're going to click the plus button to the right. And then what we're going to do is select Edit with Piskel. So we're going to left click. This takes us into the built-in graphic editor inside of Gdevelop. We're going to click on this black square here. I'm going to change this to green. So I just dragged here and then dragged here. So we have this green color. I'm going to go to the paint bucket here. Fill this with this empty area with green. I'm going to name this Block. It's not necessary to have this named. When I say this, we're making a sprite that's going to be brought into Gdevelop. I figure I named it because it was easy to name it. So we're going to go to Save. So now we have this block right here. So we're going to then click Apply. Okay, so I'm going to left click on this block. I'm then going to left click and drag this block out. Here's the block right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this block so that it is covering most of this building here. I'm going to hold Control, and then I held Control for very briefly, let go, very similar to what we did before. Holding Control, this whole area right here. I'll click here, hold Control. I'll click here, hold Control and drag up. Hold Control, now drag. There you go. Let go of Control. Click here again, hold Control. I'm going to left click here, hold Control, left click and drag. Make this thinner. See this circle right here? If we left click and drag on the circle, we can rotate our sprite. Not sure. I'm not sure how, as far as appearance, because it looks like this is still set here, but you can, I think this is more appearance. I'm not sure. Anyway, these sprites right here. Yeah, we definitely want the edges to be. So this is good here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to make this thinner. So I want our character to be able to move along the street there. Well, you can set this up in various ways to block out the buildings. So just know that we're going to use this to block where our player character goes. For areas like this, where there's things that are slanted like that, because when I look here, I'm thinking that this is the computer's probably going to see this and not that. So what you could do is hold Control, shrink this down, and you could use multiple, I'll hold Control, multiple versions of this to do diagonal. As a matter of fact, this here I'm actually going to delete. I'm going to hold Control, pull this out, push this over here. I'm just going to hold control so that way I can make a diagonal right there. Shrink this down. Kind of because this is in the center, I'm thinking this is important. Same thing, I'm going to, here I'll drag this out like this. This can be, drag that to the side there. Hold control. Okay. Okay, so now we need to program this so that this actually blocks our player character. So we'll go to New Scene and Events. We'll click here. We have this highlighted here. We'll click to make a new event. We'll go to Add Condition. We'll go to Common Conditions for all objects. We'll then go to Collision. Collision again. We'll select the player. We'll then select for the object, the block, and then we'll click OK. Okay, so what this is saying is when our player is in collision with the block, do something. Now we need to tell Gdevelop what we want it to do. So we're going to click Add Action. We're going to go to Common Conditions for all objects. We're going to go to Position. Then we're going to go to Separate two objects. The first object is very important because the first object is the object that will be able to move. So that's the player. The second object is the block. Then we're going to click OK. Okay, so now with that set up, let's click the preview button. I'll click the up. We can still see these. So basically, well, let's test it out while we can see these. So we'll click here and we can see our player character cannot go through these green blocks. However, what we want is for it being the game to look like our player is, just cannot go through the buildings and not the green blocks that are there. Okay, so to set that up with this highlighted, this being this event, we're going to click this plus button to make a new event. We're going to click Add Condition. We're going to go to Scene. We're going to select at the beginning of the scene. Then we're going to select OK. We're then going to go to Add Action. We're going to go to Common Actions for all objects. We're going to select Visibility. We're going to select Hide. And then we're going to select Block. And then we're going to select OK. Okay, so with that set up, we're going to click the preview button. I'm going to click maximize. So now when our player character tries to walk through the building, the player character cannot walk through the buildings. And with this, you could make this be how you want it to be. So you could have things be so if you want the player character to not be able to walk through the cars, you could set that up. And it's fairly easy to do. So I'm going to click to the X button, get out of that preview window. Okay, as far as using these isometric backgrounds for final games, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. However, hopefully you can see that you can very quickly have an isometric background to work with. You could always take these backgrounds and put either 3D graphics over them or drawn graphics over them. You could also clean up the graphics in something like Krita, GIMP, or Photoshop. And what I like about this is it's just a very quick way to get isometric graphics to work with. Also, what's nice about this technique is you can have the areas be as big as you want them to be. You can also have urban areas, or you can have forest areas or desert areas. Because you're using Google Maps as the basis, you pretty much can, almost any type of, earth area that you can find on Google Maps, you can take that, get a screenshot of it and then use that as your isometric background. Okay guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and reshare them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel and you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.